Someone Better by I_am_Ellie on AO3. Episode 13, Chapter 11. Time marches on. Shouta felt a twinge of anxiety upon waking up that morning. It was the end of September. Izuku had been in school for around a month and a half now. Shouta knew that the boy had friends. He always pointed them out when he saw them in the grocery store or when Shouta dropped him off. And he talked about them constantly. Hitoshi, who didn't like to talk and communicated through pencil and notebook. Mei, who had a passion for inventing. Ochako, the sweetest girl who gives the best hugs on Kisho. He also knew that there were some not so nice children in his nephew's class. Mean boys who made fun of Hitoshi when he started crying, who said rude things about Mei when she got excited about an invention, who liked to trip Ochako in the hallways and spread rumors behind Izuku's back. Shouta knew, even if Izuku didn't tell him. But when he felt the pinch of anxiety in his stomach, he was worried, to say the least. Terrified might be a better word, and he considered keeping the boy home from school, to keep him safe, keep him from harm. But Izuku had to have an education, and he couldn't just keep the cabbage home based on a bad feeling. So he got Izuku ready for school, and every movement was methodical, as anxiety built up more and more. But he tried to keep his mind empty and his hands steady as he went through his tasks. Button this, comb, tie, and when Izuku hugged him on their way out of the door, Shouta hugged him back, not wanting to seem too awkward. He kneeled down, and the boy's arm had wrapped around his neck, and Shouta had rubbed a hand up and down the boy's back. He wondered if Izuku felt the prickle of anxiety too. The car ride to the school was filled with Izuku's instant chatter, and Shouta tried to keep a distant ear on what the boy was saying as he focused on the road. The tags on his shirt were there, ever so present and irritating, and Shouta tried not to curse his work shirt out loud for the child to hear. Shouta handed Izuku a few dollars in a plastic bag to buy lunch at school, since Hizashi hadn't had the time to make anything that morning, before hurrying to the office, and Izuku grinned at him before skipping into school. The anxiety in his stomach only grew as he forced his eyes away from the building and turned the car's engine. He would be fine. Okay, class, we're going to play a game today, the teacher said, and Izuku saw Hitoshi go stiff. Izuku grabbed his hand, and Hitoshi smiled weakly at him. Mei and Ochako were talking next to them, chattering away about a new potato gun Mei had made. This one is a potato machine gun. Ochako, a potato machine gun. Quiet, everyone, quiet, the teacher said, waiting for Mei and Ochako to settle down before continuing. Now, the game today will all be going around the room. Everyone will be sharing what they want to do when they're older and what their parents' professions are. Understand? Izuku noticed that Hitoshi looked very, very nervous. Ma'am, he called. If we don't want to play, do we have to? Everyone must participate, Midoriya, the teacher said swiftly. It's a group bonding exercise of sorts. Now, table 1, go first. And so they went around the room. The more common professions, stockbrokers and chefs and cashiers. Then the kids' professions, ballerinas, doctors, and police officers. Izuku, Ochako, Mei, and Hitoshi's table were at the very back of the room, the very last in line. Hitoshi seemed to have sunk further into his seat the closer it got to being his turn, and even Izuku was starting to feel a bit nervous. But he knew that if the teacher tried to make Hitoshi talk, the boy would cry, and Izuku knew that meant the mean kids would make fun of Hitoshi if he started crying, and Izuku couldn't let them make fun of his friend. He was going to be a hero. So when it was his table's turn, he was the first to stand up. My Unkisho is a pro hero, Izuku announced. And so is my Unkisashi, and I'm going to be a hero too when I grow up. The assignment was to share what your parents' jobs are, Izuku, the teacher reminded him. Start over. Oh, my mommy doesn't have a job no more. Her batteries died. What was her job, Izuku? She was a nurse for a little while, I think. Izuku answered, hesitantly. He could feel the part of himself that wanted to cry at the mention of his mother rear its ugly head, and he tamped it down with a smile. And your father? I don't know, Izuku answered. I think he worked at a bank? He's on a business trip in America, but I think he's gonna come back to Japan soon. And what do you want to be when you grow up? Izuku's grin widened, and it was a real smile this time. I'm gonna be a hero like my unkies, and I'm gonna be the best hero ever. There were scattered snickers from the mean kid's table. That's a heavy aspiration, Izuku, the teacher said. And it's difficult, even with people who don't have the limitations you find yourself with. It might be better if you thought about doing something else. Is there anything else you want to do? Izuku frowned. No, why would there be? I know what I want to be. I'm gonna be a hero. More snickers. Nothing, Izuku, the teacher said with a weary sigh, moving on to the next person. Ochako, why don't you share? My parents own a construction company, Ochako informed them, and I'm gonna be a hero when I grow up too, with Zuku. The teacher frowned. May? My parents are dentists, May informed her snarkily, and I'm gonna work in the hero support and make weapons for Zuku, Ochako, and Toshi. The teacher turned to Hitoshi. And I suppose you want to be a hero too? She asked. Hitoshi's shoulders hunched up near his ears. His dad's a surgeon, Izuku answered for the boy. A brain surgeon, and Hitoshi's gonna be a hero too. Me, him, Ochako are gonna make a hero team, and May's gonna help us. How are you gonna be heroes? A kid from the mean table said. He pointed at Izuku. You don't have a quirk. He pointed at May. You're crazy. He pointed at Ochako. You can't even use your quirk without getting sick. Finally, Hitoshi. And you don't even talk, and you have an evil quirk. Don't say that to them, Izuku said, standing up. You aren't allowed to be mean to them. They can be heroes too, and they'll be great ones, just like I will. The boy seemed to be shocked. Midoriya, the teacher said. Sit down. She frowned at the other boy. You both will be getting letters sent home tonight. The game is over. Everyone work on your homework, all right? The teacher sat behind her desk and started drinking heavily from her mug of coffee. Izuku sat down in a seat, fuming. He was just trying to help his friends when that bully was hurting them, and he still got in trouble? May was glaring daggers at the mean boy. Ochako looked very sad. Hitoshi was shaking in his seat, and his shoulders were trembling while he breathed. Kind of like... Izuku grabbed the boy's hand and dragged him out of his seat. We gotta go to the bathroom, Izuku called, quickly grabbing a pass and rushing out the door. They reached the nearest boys' bathroom, and Hitoshi slid down a wall. Izuku closed the bathroom door behind them. Izuku, Hizashi said seriously. Here's the first thing you need to know about your Uncle Sho. His mind works a little differently. Differently? Izuku echoed. Yes, Hizashi said. He's a little sensitive to certain things. Flashing lights, smells, noises, feelings, stuff like that. And sometimes it can take a while for him to understand what you mean when you are saying something. Izuku nodded. He had noticed that. And when things like that pile up, sometimes he could get overwhelmed. Hizashi continued. The best thing to do if that happens is to come to me so I can help and to stay out of the way, okay? But if I'm not here... Well, can't you just teach me what I gotta do? Izuku asked. That's what I was planning, Hizashi said. If I'm not here, don't be scared, okay? You have to be calm. Move him somewhere quieter. Ask him if it's okay to touch him. And no light touches either. He thinks they feel weird. Big touches, like big hugs. Don't crowd him, and don't touch him if he says he doesn't not want to, okay? Remind him to breathe. Count with him. Ask him to talk about what's wrong, because sometimes he doesn't know. If he starts scratching at himself or anything like that, tell him to stop. Maybe get his weighted blanket. When he calms down, he needs water. Okay? Izuku nodded. I'll remember that, Izuku said. But why does that happen to him? Ankisashi shrugged. I don't know. It's just how he is. He's always been like that. Everyone's different, Izuku. He's just a little more so. But there's nothing wrong with him being different, okay? Understand? Izuku nodded. Good boy. Uncle Sashi said, ruffling his hair. Izuku giggled. Izuku didn't think Hitoshi was different, like Shouta was different. Hitoshi didn't seem to mind loud noises or flashing lights or weird smells or weird feelings. He just didn't talk, and he was scared a lot. But Hitoshi right now looked a lot like Shouta when he got overwhelmed. But Hizashi had taught him how to help. He could fix this. He could. So he moved the purple-haired boy to a quiet place. And now he was on the bathroom floor, and he was crying openly and trying to catch his breath. And he still looked scared. Scared like he thought someone mean was still listening. Izuku checked the stalls. The bathroom's empty, Hitoshi. It's okay, Izuku said. The taller boy relaxed slightly, though the stuttering breaths did not ease. What was he supposed to do now? What Ankisashi said to do? Oh, right. It's okay. It's okay, just breathe. Breathe slowly, okay? In for 4 seconds. Hold your breath for 7 seconds. And out for 8. Okay? Okay? Hitoshi nodded and started taking slow, deep breaths. Every once in a while, his breath would dissolve into sobs and more stuttered air, and Izuku's hands would flap anxiously out of their own volition. But at least his friend was breathing. Are you okay? Izuku asked, and Hitoshi nodded. Can you talk to me? Can you tell me what happened? Hitoshi winced, and his shoulders hunched up near his ears again. That's okay. Do you have your notebook? Hitoshi pulled out a small red book from the inner pockets of his uniforms. Write it out. Explain what your feelings and what you think is wrong, okay? Hitoshi nodded, hesitantly. The boys were mean when they said I had an evil quirk. I know, Izuku said. I'm sorry, Toshi. They shouldn't have said that to you. Hitoshi shrugged. It's okay. No, it's not, Izuku said vehemently. They have no right to be mean to you, even if they think your quirk is evil. Which it isn't. Hitoshi frowned, like he didn't quite believe him. It isn't. There's no such thing as an evil quirk. It is what you choose to do with your quirk that makes it good or evil. Izuku hoped Hitoshi didn't notice that he was quoting a line from a movie. I hurt someone. Was it on purpose? Izuku asked. Hitoshi's face looked pinched. Was it? No. Then you're not evil. There's nothing evil about you. You like cats too much to be evil. Hitoshi's shoulders shook again, but Izuku thought this time it was because of laughter, not because he was sad. Time to go, kiddo. Unki Sashi called from his car. Izuku smiled at him and climbed in. Is Unki Sho home? Izuku asked, like he always did. He'll be there by the time we get back, Unki Sashi said, like he always did. Was Akio good? The best. Izuku smiled. I knew it. He fidgeted with his hands. Unki Sashi, I have a question. What's up, baby? Unki Sashi asked, trying to maneuver into the next lane. His fingers were tapping at his legs, and he couldn't find the words for what he wanted to say. Do you want to wait until we get home? Unki Sashi suggested. Your Unki Sho might help us answer your question. Izuku nodded, and Unki Sashi started talking to him about someone at the office. How he spilled coffee all down his shirt and had backed into a plant, spilling dirt all over the office. Izuku started laughing at that. It sounded like something straight out of a cartoon. It didn't take long to get to the apartment, and Unki Sashi grabbed his backpack so Izuku could focus on undoing his seatbelt and getting out. Unki Sashi grabbed his hand and led them to his apartment, where Unki Sho was sprawled across the couch with 2 cats sleeping on his chest. His shoes were still on, and his work shirt was tossed onto the floor. "Hey, babe," Uncle Sashi said. Uncle Sho grunted from the couch. "Our little listener here has a question." Uncle Sho sat up slowly, and the cats that had been sleeping on him jumped away, looking agitated. Akio quickly walked towards Izuku, rubbing against his calf, and Izuku picked her up, cuddling her close. "I see," Uncle Sho finally said. Izuku sat down on the couch, crossing his legs and turning to Uncle Sho. Uncle Sashi sat beside Uncle Sho. Both were giving him their full attention. "We played a game in school today where we were supposed to talk about our parents' jobs, and I told them my dad's business trip to America." Izuku didn't notice how Uncle Sho went stiff and still, or how Uncle Sashi's jaw clenched. "And I was wondering when he was coming back to come get me." Uncle Sho and Uncle Sashi's eyes widened. "I wanted to tell him all about you," Izuku continued, "and tell him about Mommy so he knows. And tell him about how great you and Uncle Sho are, so he stops thinking Uncle Sho is a freak, so I can come visit you lots." "Izuku," Uncle Sashi said, and Izuku stopped talking. I don't know how to." "Did I ever tell you about my father, Izuku?" Shouta asked, and Izuku shook his head. "Not much. Your dad was Grandpa, right?" Shouta nodded. "He wasn't around much, and he was always spending all our money. When I was 7 years old, he stopped coming home at all, and I never saw him again." Izuku's eyes widened. But why did he stop coming home?" "I never knew for sure," Shouta admitted. "My mother thought he was with another woman, I think." Shouta took a deep breath, and that same anxiousness from this morning returned. "When I was 14, I think my mother stopped coming home too, and I lived alone. Your aunt and uncle helped me a lot." "That's good," Izuku said, though he still looked shocked and confused. Why are you telling me? What about my question?" Izuku's eyes widened slightly. I don't think he's coming back, child," Shouta said. "He left, Izuku." "I am so sorry, baby," Hizashi said to the child, and Shouta saw him wipe at his eyes, like he was trying to keep from crying. "Why?" Izuku asked. "Why did he leave? When did he—" "Oh!" His hands clenched in his uniform shirt, and Shouta had the distinct, fleeting thought that it might tear if he wasn't careful, that if it did, he would have to replace it. When had his thoughts become so consumed by money? "It's my—" "Oh!" Izuku frowned. But Dad loves me. He said he loved me. Why would he leave me and Mommy if he loved us?" "Sometimes people hurt the people they love," Hizashi said. "It doesn't excuse anything, but my Mommy's batteries died after he left," Izuku mumbled to himself. And he left because—" Izuku's eyes suddenly filled with tears, and a sob crawled its way back up to the boy's throat. "Oh no, 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 please, no!" "Izuku, he left, he's gone, 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 gone!" Izuku sobbed again, louder, before letting out a wail. His hands were in his hair, and he was tugging at it, shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Izuku, don't do that." Hizashi tried, but it was like the child didn't even hear him. "Why?" Izuku hiccuped. "I didn't Hunky show it was okay. It didn't matter. I don't understand." Hizashi grabbed at the boy's hands, untangling them from his hair, and he pulled the boy impossibly close. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Izuku." Izuku looked up at Hizashi with tear-filled eyes. "Does Dad think I'm a freak, too?" I don't know, Izuku," Hizashi said. "But you're not. You are not a freak. I promise. I've been called a freak my entire life. Shouta stated. There was no emotion behind his words. It was a simple fact. Does that make me a freak? Izuku shook his head. And neither are you. His opinion doesn't matter either way, Izuku, because he's not here. The people who are still here with you, who care about you, their opinions matter the most. Hizashi and I don't think you're a freak. Neither does your auntie Nemuri. Does Ochako? Hitoshi? May? Shouta felt rather proud that he had remembered the children's names. Izuku slowly shook his head. Then you are not a freak. Shouta said. Dad thinks I am. Izuku said again. You don't know that. Shouta said. And he left, so he doesn't matter, alright? It feels like it matters, Izuku said, and Shouta felt some inexplicable emotion rise up inside of him. Because wasn't that the truth? How many times during his UA years had he stayed up late staring up at the ceiling and wondering why no one seemed to want him? How many times had he let other people's opinions morph into his own? I know, Shouta said. God, he knows. Izuku buried his face in Hisashi's shoulder, and Hisashi kept holding him close, muttering something Shouta couldn't hear in the boy's ear, and rocking him side to side to side. Finally, after a long, long moment, he looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed and filled with tears, and he looked so tired, too tired for someone his age. I don't think I understand. I'm not. That's okay, Shouta said. Neither did I. That's okay. It's going to be alright. Sometimes things don't make sense. You'll understand someday, I promise you. I don't think I will. That's okay. Something in Shota's chest hurt. It's alright. Alright? It's okay to not understand. Shouta worried he wouldn't understand that either. Worried he hadn't gotten what he was trying to say across. But if Izuku was confused, he didn't show it. He nodded at Shouta, and Shouta smiled back at him, hoping he didn't look too awkward. Can I go to bed, please? I'm sleepy, Izuku said. Sure, Izuku, Hizashi said, settling him down on the floor. Do you want a bedtime story? No, Izuku said, walking away. I just want to sleep. Good night, child, Shouta said. He heard another small sob as the child's door closed. He didn't come out the rest of the night, and Shouta didn't make him go to school the next morning. And time marched on. Alright, that was an angsty chapter. I hope y'all are patting yourselves dry. Sorry if Izuku's voice acting was not as great. I am, I don't know. I just couldn't pull it off today. I couldn't pull off the tears. Normally, I'm able to cry on, cry and then being able to do it. Not necessarily like cry, but tear up to the point where my voice starts to become that raspy tone it normally is when I'm upset and stuff. I used to not be able to do that on command, but then theater class happened. And then the theater festival happened, which was a contest between the whole district of theater. So all the theater departments of the district would get together. We would have a workshop, we would talk, we would have 3 competitions. Monologue, 2-person scenes, and improv. And let's just say I was good. Then again, my monologue was about suicide, so how the judge let me do that, I have no idea. And you know what? I would have won that year if it wasn't for my hands. Alright? I just didn't block my hands well enough. So that bumped me down to 2nd place, unfortunately. But life goes on. I think my masterpiece of suicide was amazing. But enough about me and enough about my acting skills. I want to go into the psychology corner. Woo woo, psychology corner. Woo! Get your psychology hats on, your notebooks, your pens or pencils, and get ready to take notes, as Teacher Echo here is here. Alright, so first, I want to talk about, I want to talk about Hitoshi, specifically, and him not talking. It has not been said yet, but I think it's about time I tell you guys. Hitoshi is selectively mute. It is one of the tags, and it is mentioned in one of the chapters. I think it's one of the following chapters. He is selectively mute. Keep that in mind. We will go back into that later. So when the activity of saying your parents' jobs and then what you want to be in the future, Izuku is nervous for Hitoshi because Izuku knows Hitoshi is not going to be able to speak, he's going to cry, and the kids are going to make fun of him, right? Instead of focusing about, oh, I'm going to have to speak up, because most of the time kids are nervous about speaking up themselves. And I bet you Izuku was a little worried about that, but you know what? What overrides that? It's people-pleasing tendencies. Woo woo, people-pleasing tendencies. So, when it comes for their turn and Izuku answers, and the teacher pulls off, I do not like the teacher in this fanfic. I hope you guys know, you're not gonna like the teacher in this fanfic, right? Because the teacher was informed in the beginning of the school year, a month and a half ago, that she is not to mention Izuku's mother or father. Also, how insensitive. Not all kids have parents, right? They might have had birth parents, but that does not mean that they know who they are. Some kids are raised by siblings, are raised by grandparents, are raised by uncles. Some kids don't have parents. Some kids aren't like Izuku, who grew up with their parents and then had to move. Some kids' parents died at such an early age that they don't remember who their parents are. So if you ask them, oh, but I was talking about your parents, that is so insensitive, right? I know the teacher that my little brother has, the one in kindergarten. She always refers to, quote unquote, what people would be like, oh, give this to your parents. Give this to your people. Give this to your adults. Specifically, she says, give this to your adults. Your adults. I see some other people say your guardians. She says your adults. And I've always loved that because, you know, not all kids have parents, right? Sometimes things happen. Parents abandon kids. Parents die. Kids don't get to meet their parents. Or even simply mentioning their parents can be triggering for some kids, especially kids at such a young age like kindergarten, who are still, you know, learning stuff and still learning what death is, because death is a very complex and harsh topic for a kid to understand, let alone go through, okay? We do not. You wouldn't be doing this to a kid who's in high school, like, hey, what did your parents do? My parents died literally a month or two ago. Why are you doing this? That is insensitive and that is fucking bullshit. That is mean. That is bully behavior. You are a high school bully. Okay, moving on. Obviously we have Izuku standing up for his friends. We love Izuku doing this. And again, people-pleasing tendencies, but it also is just him being nice. It's Izuku wanting to be a hero. So him standing up and being like, hey, that's mean, blah, 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 blah. That's Izuku. That's three things of Izuku's. His general kindness, his hero kindness, right? Like him wanting to be a hero. He's like, I'm supposed to be a hero, so I'm supposed to be standing up for people and helping people, right? And his people-pleasing tendencies, right? All of these combined together to, you know, end up doing this, right? An action can be followed because of multiple different reasons. You know, just because someone does something does not mean that that something is only done because of one reason. There could be multiple reasons, where some of the reasons outweigh more than the others, right? While in Izuku's mind, he might have compromised of his whole people-pleasing tendencies into, I'm a hero, so I should do this. When in reality, underneath, there's the tones of, I need to do this or else. My friends, my uncles, my people I love in my life will leave me or die. Right? Obviously, the leaving part is yet to be brought up, since Izuku hasn't had someone leave him to his awareness. But it's going to be starting to come up a whole lot more now that he's aware that his dad physically abandoned him. He's going to start getting abandonment issues, because ain't no way he's not going to get abandonment issues. You know? Ain't no fucking way. Alright, so, I also want to talk about the teacher. Give me back. I forgot to talk about the teacher. The teacher is constantly being like, Hitoshi, you need to answer. Hitoshi, you need to answer. Ma'am, you need to shut the fuck up and sit the fuck back down before I rock your shit. Anyways, moving on. moving on. So Izuku remembering every word that Hisashi said to calm down Shouta, which by the way, that whole talk of like, hey, Sho's a little different. Not bad, he's just a little different. We're all a little different. That's not bad. Love that. That's a great way to explain to a child, stuff like that. I know some children genuinely ask me and, or specifically there's this one child who asked my mom, right? This child is in the same class as my baby brother, right? My little brother who's in kindergarten. And the kid has been with him since preschool. And the kid asked my mom one day, right? Because we, for a while, had to go with him because the school couldn't handle him. We've been fighting tooth and nail for him to get his 504 or even an IEP plan. They were like, no, IEP is not a thing. IEP is the same as EIP, which, no, individualized education program is not the same as early intervention program, all right? Those are two different things, all right? Two different fucking things. Don't even mistake those. No. And then they were like, there's no resources that you're asking for, which the resource we were constantly asking for was for someone to be able to be there with my sibling, my mom's kid, to be able to help him, or have the teacher get an aide so that they will be able to help him. Because the thing about him is he has ADHD, he gets frustrated, he has other symptoms of other diagnosis as well. We've sent these papers to the teachers and the principals and stuff like that, and it's been a fighting struggle. Whatever, point taken is, this child came up to my mother one day because we would have to go with him to school because their solution, because they're like, oh, we can't ask the district for this, right? There's not enough, we don't have enough personnel. Their first answer was, we don't have enough personnel, whatever. We don't have enough people on staff to be able to do that, right? And they were like, okay, fine, but don't you have an obligation to go to the district, right? This was an argument I once had with the vice principal. I was like, okay, but isn't when you don't have enough personnel and a child desperately needs help and you need resources and stuff like that, it's the district's responsibility to lend you that. And literally the vice principal said, no, we cannot bug the district for that stuff. Guess what they're doing now? The past couple months. They're like, hey, we're gonna send help from the district, and we're gonna make sure that the district is sending us help because it is their right. It is our right to ask for help from the district, and it's your right that we ask for help from the district. Interesting. So, years of battling with you guys for nothing? Okay, whatever. Point taken is, the kid asked, hey, I want to know why little brother's name is the way he is. Why can't he just sit down and behave like the rest of the kids? Why is he always so energetic? And I remember my mom told me this, and she also told my little brother's therapist, because she also sees that therapist, specifically to be able to know how to handle my little brother and stuff. And my mother told me, honest to God, I don't know how I would explain it to a child, right? And the therapist told us to explain it, just like how Hizashi explained it to Izuku. That, his mind works a little different. He has something. He has something like how you like the color red and this kid likes the color blue, like, right. Simplify it, but at the same time, explain it, right? And they also said that there is many different ways that one can explain it and stuff like that, and sometimes it's hard, even with parents, because, it's hard to, come to terms with the fact that, okay, your child has this, not condition, because it's not a condition, but it is a disability. It is considered a disability, right? That when people hear about it, they're automatically going to think, oh, your child is sick, your child can't behave, your child is this, your child is that. So it's really hard when a little kid who doesn't know any better asks you, and what are you supposed to say, right? It hits you, right? Because you can't just tell them, oh, he has ADHD, like when you can with an adult. you have to explain it to a child. And sitting there and explaining it is the psychological effects of, oh, I have to not only explain it to this child, but understand myself that kids are always thinking of my child like this. Kids are always thinking, well, why can't he just do this? And not understand, which obviously I'm not blaming the child. The child is simply asking, and I think it's marvelous that the child asks. I think we should educate children on things like that, right? You know, people who are different. Not necessarily in the sense of like ADHD or autism, but in the sense that some kids are bald because they have a condition where they don't grow hair, or some kids are blind, some people are selectively mute, stuff like that, so that kids can grow awareness and not grow up to be bigoted bitches. Moving on. Moving on to my next thing, which is like, okay, so Hizashi is explaining it to Izuku like this, and Hizashi explains it and stuff like that, and Izuku recalls this vividly. He knows what to, well, not vividly, he still fricks up a couple here and there. It makes sense. He's a 5-year-old child, come on. But the fact that Izuku remembers, the fact that Izuku recollects this and is able to replicate this, those are my chicken nuggets. Stop, Storm. No, those are my chicken nuggets. Stop it. My chicken nuggets. You can't eat those. They're mine. But he recollects this and replicates this with Hitoshi. Speaks volumes, because clearly Izuku memorized this so that he could help his uncle Sho when he's having a hard time. Let me say this again. Say it with me, people. What is this? People-pleasing tendencies. What do you need to do? Get rid of the people-pleasing tendencies and take care of yourself. Those are my chicken nuggets. Stop it. No, you're not allowed to have chicken nuggets. This is bad for you, and that's ketchup too. That's also bad for you. Stop. Don't go on my computer. You're gonna stop the recording. Jesus fucking Christ. Ugh. I wanted a cat. You know what? I love you so much. Look at me. Come at me. I love you. I can never get mad at you. Okay, but as I was saying, right? People-pleasing tendencies. Alright, next one. Obviously, Izuku's helping, which, wonderful, amazing. I love that Izuku was able to help. Sometimes kids don't know how to deal with other kids who are having breakdowns, meltdowns, panic attacks, or in Hitoshi's case, just not being able to regulate his emotions. Kids at that age don't even know how to regulate their own emotions, let alone how to help another kid regulate their own emotions. Which, again, Izuku should not be doing this. This should be a teacher's job. Izuku should not be responsible for the well-being of his peers. He is a 5-year-old. He should not have the tools to be able to help someone else through this process. Like, do not get me wrong, it's great that he knows how to do this. But the teacher should have taken in charge. The teacher should have seen, hey, this kid is crying, this kid needs help. I should help him, you know, or get someone to help. That is not acceptable behavior from the teacher. Fuck you, teacher. We hate the teacher. Hashtag hate the teacher squad. Alright, moving on. Next one. Shouta had this thing where it's like, oh, when did I become so money viewing? Or like, when did I view money so much? Since you got into debt and since you've been poor, so yeah. Debt and being poor kind of, you know, does that to you. I know for a while when I would go to stores, I would have panic attacks at the store. I would have whole panic attacks, right? Because I was like, what if I don't have enough? I once went inside a store. I knew I had $100 in my pocket. I knew I had enough money. I was buying 3 things. And the whole time, I was trying to wheel myself from having a whole breakdown because what if I don't have enough money? I'm sitting here with a calculator. I'm like, okay, this costs this much, but let's add $3 of tax. $3 of tax. And let me add this, but let's add $3 more of tax. And let's add this. Okay. Fuck. Okay. That's how much. Am I sure I have $100? Okay, I have $100. And I'm there at the checkout, right? But am I sure that I have $100? Okay, but what if I did the math right? Wrong. Let me do it again. Right? Look, when you're poor, that's all you think about, alright? I would have whole panic attacks at the fucking lines. Because it's like, do I have enough? Do I have enough? Luckily, I have grown out of that, and I don't have that much of a big panic attack. I still do the calculating thing, just because it eases my mind. I don't understand those who could just throw stuff into their cart and hope that they have enough money at the end. I can never do that. No, thank you. But I don't have whole panic attacks when I go into stores like I used to. But yeah. Next is the last thing, which, as I've been saying, Izuku's gonna get extra trauma from, his father leaving him, which is inevitable. They had to tell him at some point. It's good that they told him now rather than later. And it's just sad. It's sad because, he already has people-pleasing tendencies and attachment issues because he feels like he needs to take care of his mother, because he failed at his mother, so he needs to take care of everybody else. Attachment issues because he did lose his mother and he doesn't want to lose anyone else, which is feeding, again, the people-pleasing tendencies, and the people-pleasing tendencies is feeding the attachment issues. And guess what he's gonna have as well? Abandonment issues. What are all those three gonna go together? Marvel into a nice hurricane of emotions and emotional wreckage of not being able to take care of oneself. And you know what makes it absolutely worse? He's gonna have self-blame now. Yeah. Because he made the realization that his father left because of him. And because his father left, his mother's batteries died. Therefore, it's even more his fault. He is blaming himself even more for something that was completely out of his control. And you know what? To a child, 1 plus 1 equaling 3 makes complete sense. For us, we can have that recollection. 1, we're out of the situation and out of those shoes, right? And 2, we're a lot older and we understand complex situations, and we understand it is not Izuku's fault. If anyone is to blame for Inko becoming so depressed that she ended up, choosing a permanent thing for a temporary, a permanent solution when a temporary what was it fucking saying? I don't know. When he ended up choosing to do something, so sad like that, and abandoning and leaving her child, because you cannot tell me that she didn't leave her child. She left her child. She was depressed? Yes, but she left her child. I still don't like her, not just because she left her child, but she left Aizawa. She's done a bunch of stuff, and it's just a bunch of little things. Do I think she's a genuinely horrible person in this fanfic? No. Do I think her actions are horrible? Yes, her actions are horrible that led to hurting a lot of people, and she needed to take accountability, but obviously she can't anymore because she is 6 feet under. Okay, but whatever. It is not Inko's fault, right? Yes, she did do what she did, but it is not her fault. Whose fault is it? Hisashi's for being a bigoted bitch. Okay, whatever. But if anyone is to fault, it is literally Hizashi, Inko, and Izuku's not even in the board, because Izuku is not to blame for what happened. He is a child. He had no control over him being born quirkless. He had no control that his father was a bigoted bitch. He had no control over the fact that his father left, and that left his mother depressed. And he had no control of the fact that nobody in his life, no one at school, listened to him at his cries of help. Because I'll tell you this, that teacher from his old school is also to blame. Because that he told his teacher that his mother wasn't feeling well, his mother wasn't eating. He literally confided. And if that teacher did her due diligence, did her job as a mandated fucking reporter, she would have gotten Izuku and Inko the help that they needed and deserved. Inko would have been helped. She would have never done what she did. Izuku would still have his mother and wouldn't have this underlying trauma. But no. All the adults in Izuku's life, since all the way up to the point of his mother dying and him being moved with his uncle, have failed him. The only adults who don't seem to fail him right now are his uncle, his uncles, and his aunt. Those are the only 3 adults in his whole life who has not failed him. Think about that. Think about how that will traumatize a fucking child. How that will create attachment issues, abandonment issues, and trust issues. How Izuku might trust you, but he will never fully trust you. How there will always be that underlying thing of, will you abandon me? Will you leave me? Am I not good enough for you? And if I'm not, if I make a mistake, will you leave me? I don't trust that you will not leave me. And that is the sad reality of this upbringing that Izuku has. He is going to be traumatized to the point where if he doesn't get the help he needs right now, he will end up being an adult who will not be able to do this, right? And obviously, as I was saying before I went into this whole tangent, we as older people, as hopefully teens, you're supposed to be 13 and over to be operating on YouTube. Okay. If you're not, click out now. All my videos are not for children. Click out now. I curse a lot. But we understand that it's not Izuku's fault. We understand that it's not. It's simple for us to understand this. But if you were in Izuku's shoes, even at the age you were, you would still feel guilty. You would deep down understand, okay, it's not my fault, but you would still feel guilty. That will still eat you up. Now put yourself in Izuku's shoes at the age of 5, where you're still not learning complex things like that. And you still view the world in a black and white, and you're still learning social norms, and you're still learning social rules. You're learning who you are and what you want to be. And on top of that, put this complex thing of, is it my fault or not for being born quirkless? Obviously, you're thinking, oh, no, it's not Izuku's fault. But think about it. Truly think about it. There's probably moments in your life when you were little, even when you were, big now, where you truly thought it was your fault, but in reality, it wasn't. But because you have such a kind-hearted way of, if you think that something is your fault a lot of the time, you always blame yourself for other people's actions, I'll tell you this now, there's some underlying trauma underneath all of that. There's some underlying issues that have come across from your past and past events that have happened from you that still haunt you to this day and still scar you. And if so, trust me, it'll get better. It will. I'm living proof. But obviously Izuku doesn't understand this, and that is the sad reality. And he's just gonna compartmentalize this. All right, that was a long psychology corner because I said so. But okay, that's it. As always, my raindrops, 24 minutes, Jesus Christ. Make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.